She was rejected by everyone. Then a human stepped forward to dance. The Symphony of Stars. The Harmonia space station hung like a glittering jewel against the velvet backdrop of space, its transparent dome revealing a spectacular view of the twin stars of the Andromeda Beta sector. Inside the grand ballroom, thousands of lights mimicked the stars outside, casting a celestial glow over the Centennial Accord celebration, an event meant to commemorate 100 years since the first tentative peace treaties between Earth and the 7 major civilizations of the Galactic Alliance. Ambassador Thera of the Lumidian Collective stood alone at the periphery of the room, her luminescent skin casting a soft blue glow that pulsed gently with her heartbeat, a biological feature that made her people impossible to hide and difficult to trust. The Lumidians' empathic abilities and bioluminescence had made them objects of fear and suspicion for centuries. Even now, 200 years after first contact, many species gave them a wide berth, uncomfortable with the notion that their emotions might be sensed without their consent. Thera adjusted her crystalline formal attire, designed to diffuse rather than amplify her natural glow. She had spent hours preparing for this evening, studying human and Arcturian social customs, memorizing conversation topics that might bridge cultural divides. Yet 3 hours into the celebration, not a single diplomat had approached her beyond perfunctory greetings. Ambassador Thera, a voice had said earlier, belonging to the Vexillian Minister of Trade. How illuminating to see your kind represented tonight. The minister had quickly excused himself before Thera could even respond. Across the room, Elijah Reed, a human xenobiologist from the Mars Research Colony, tugged uncomfortably at the high collar of his formal uniform. At 35, he had spent most of his career in laboratories and field research stations, rarely attending diplomatic functions. His invitation had come as a surprise, a recognition of his groundbreaking work on interspecies genetic compatibility and medical treatments. Still, he felt out of place among career diplomats and politicians. "Quite the spectacle, isn't it?" said Ambassador Doran, a senior human diplomat who had taken Elijah under his wing for the evening. "Notice how the room has naturally segregated. Arcturians near the north entrance, Vexillians by the viewports, humans scattered but mostly near the bar." He chuckled. 100 years of peace accords and still nobody wants to mingle. Elijah nodded, his attention drawn to the solitary glowing figure by the far wall. "Who is that?" "The Lumidian." Doran followed his gaze and sighed. "Ambassador Thera, brilliant mind, they say. Her people joined the Alliance only 30 years ago, last to arrive, first to be ostracized. Shame, really. Their technological contributions could advance medicine by decades if more people would collaborate with them." "Why don't they?" "Fear mostly. Their empathic abilities make most species uncomfortable. Can't lie to a Lumidian, they'll know immediately. Makes for uncomfortable diplomacy." Doran shrugged. "Plus, there's the old prejudice. During the Proxima conflict, there were rumors that Lumidians manipulated emotions to influence negotiations." "Was there any truth to that?" Elijah asked, still watching Thera. "None whatsoever, just fear-mongering. But mud sticks, especially in interspecies politics." Elijah frowned. As a scientist, such unfounded prejudice bothered him deeply. Throughout his career, he had worked with tissue and DNA samples from dozens of species, including Lumidians. Their unique cellular regeneration capabilities had formed the foundation of his research on universal immunotherapy. Across the room, Thera had made one final attempt at connection, approaching a group of Terrellian diplomats whose physiology was not dissimilar from her own. She had respectfully dimmed her bioluminescence to its lowest setting and prepared a greeting in their native tongue. "Greetings of peace, kindred of the stars," she offered in flawless Terrellian. "May your internal flames burn brightly this cycle." The group had fallen silent, exchanging uncomfortable glances before one of them responded curtly. "Our internal flames are not your concern, Lumidian." They had moved away as a group, leaving Thera standing alone once more. That was enough. Thera's glow dimmed to a dull flicker, betraying her deep disappointment despite her diplomatic training. She turned toward the exit, dignity intact but spirit crushed. 100 years of supposed unity, yet nothing had truly changed. Her people remained outsiders, their gifts seen as threats rather than blessings. Elijah had been watching the exchange from across the room, his scientific curiosity having given way to genuine concern. Without fully considering the diplomatic implications, he set his untouched glass of Arcturian wine on a passing server's tray and began making his way across the crowded floor. "Reed, where are you going?" Ambassador Doran called after him. Elijah didn't answer. He navigated through clusters of diplomats, noting how conversations hushed as he passed, eyes following his trajectory toward the departing Lumidian. By the time he reached her, Thera was already at the archway leading to the observation deck. "Ambassador Thera," he called. She turned, her luminescence flickering with surprise. Up close, Elijah could see that what appeared as simple blue light from a distance was actually an intricate pattern of bioluminescent cells that shifted and flowed beneath her translucent outer dermis. Her features were delicate yet alien, large, iridescent eyes with no visible pupils, a slender nose, and lips that held a natural shimmer. "Yes," she responded, her voice melodic with an undertone that seemed to resonate in his chest rather than his ears. "I'm Dr. Elijah Reed." He offered a slight bow, the traditional Lumidian greeting he had researched but never performed until now. "I was hopping. That is," he hesitated, suddenly aware of the silence that had fallen over the nearest section of the ballroom as diplomats watched their interaction. "Would you honor me with a dance?" Thera's luminescence pulsed brightly in shock before she managed to control it. "A dance, with me?" "If that would be acceptable," Elijah said, extending his hand with palm upward, another Lumidian custom signifying openness and lack of weapons. For a moment Thera didn't move. Then slowly she placed her glowing hand in his. "It would be most acceptable, Dr. Reed." As they moved back toward the center of the ballroom, the orchestra was transitioning to a new piece, a composition specifically created for the centennial that incorporated musical elements from all 8 Alliance civilizations. The dance floor had cleared somewhat, making their entrance all the more conspicuous. "People are starring," Thera whispered, her glow pulsing with anxiety. "Let them," Elijah replied simply. "I've spent my career studying the commonalities between species rather than the differences. Perhaps it's time we demonstrated some of those commonalities." He placed his hand respectfully at her waist, maintaining the proper distance for a formal dance. Thera's hand rested lightly on his shoulder, and as the music began, a haunting melody carried by Terrellian wind instruments, they began to move. At first, their steps were awkward. Elijah had basic training in diplomatic dances but rarely practiced. Thera moved with natural grace but was clearly unaccustomed to human dance forms. Yet as the music swelled, something remarkable happened. Thera's natural empathic abilities and Elijah's scientific adaptability created a harmony of movement that transcended their differences. Her luminescence began to pulse in rhythm with the music, creating a mesmerizing display that drew gasps from onlookers. As they turned and swayed, other diplomats stopped to watch. The Arcturian ambassador leaned forward, his 6 eyes blinking in rapid succession, a sign of intense interest in his species. The Terrellian who had rebuffed Thera earlier stared open-mouthed. "You dance well for someone who studies genetics," Thera said, a smile playing at her iridescent lips. "And you adapt quickly for someone who's never danced with a human before," Elijah returned. "How did you know I've never?" "Educated guess. Given the reception you've received tonight, I doubted many humans had extended the invitation." Thera's glow dimmed slightly. "You are correct. This is my first time." As the music reached its crescendo, Elijah took a chance and executed a gentle spin, careful to match it to Thera's physiology. She followed perfectly, her crystalline garments catching the light and refracting it in dazzling patterns across the dance floor. When she returned to his arms, her glow had brightened considerably. "Thank you," she said softly. "Your kindness will not be forgotten." "It's not kindness," Elijah replied. "It's recognition." Their dance continued, and gradually something unprecedented began to happen. An Arcturian diplomat approached the floor with his Terrellian counterpart. They began to dance nearby, their movements stiff but deliberate. Then a human ambassador led a Vexillian minister to the floor. Within minutes, the dance floor had transformed from a largely empty space to a swirling display of interspecies cooperation. As the music finally drew to a close, Elijah and Thera stood at the center of the floor, surrounded by pairs of different species who had, for perhaps the first time, engaged in a cultural activity together rather than merely tolerating each other's presence. Ambassador Doran approached, his expression a mixture of shock and admiration. "Reed, you've caused quite a stir." "I simply asked the ambassador to dance," Elijah said. "And in doing so, you've done more for diplomacy than a month of formal negotiations." Doran turned to Thera and offered a respectful bow. "Ambassador, would you and Dr. Reed join me? There are several delegates who have suddenly expressed interest in discussing collaborative research initiatives with the Lumidian Collective." Thera's glow pulsed with cautious hope. "I would be honored." She turned to Elijah. "Would you accompany me, Dr. Reed? I find your perspective valuable." Elijah nodded, offering his arm in the human custom. As Thera placed her glowing hand upon it, he felt a slight tingling sensation, the natural bioelectric field of her species interacting with his own bioelectricity. It wasn't unpleasant, merely unfamiliar. As they walked together through the now murmuring crowd, something shifted in the atmosphere of the ballroom. Centuries of prejudice wouldn't disappear in a single night, but for the first time, a genuine connection had formed between a human and a Lumidian in full view of the Galactic Alliance's most influential representatives. It was a small step, just a dance, but sometimes the most profound changes begin with the simplest gestures. Echoes across the void. The morning after the Centennial Accord celebration, news of the unprecedented dance between Dr. Elijah Reed and Ambassador Thera spread across the Harmonia station like wildfire. Holographic recordings of their dance, particularly the moment when other species joined them on the floor, had been transmitted to all 8 homeworlds of the Galactic Alliance. Thera stood before the curved viewport in her diplomatic quarters, watching ships arrive and depart from the station. Her natural luminescence rippled with mixed emotions: hope, anxiety, and something else she was reluctant to identify. Ambassador, her aide Lyrics, appeared at the doorway. Young for a diplomatic position, Lyrics's bioluminescence patterns were still developing, occasionally flaring with uncontrolled emotion. "The Collective Council has requested an immediate conference. They've seen the recordings." Thera nodded, her own glow steadying into the formal pattern expected of a senior diplomat. "And the response?" "Mixed. Elder Nixon is concerned about undue familiarity with less revolved species, but Counselor Vex called it the most significant diplomatic breakthrough in 30 years. "And what do you think, Lyrics?" Thera asked softly. The younger Lumidian's patterns brightened. "I think Dr. Reed is either very brave or very foolish, perhaps both." A pause. "I also think it was beautiful." Thera allowed a smile. "Yes, it was." She turned from the viewport. "Schedule the conference, and afterward arrange a meeting with Dr. Reed. The scientific collaborations discussed last night require follow-up." Across the station in the human delegation's wing, Elijah faced his own inquisition. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Ambassador Jordan Novick paced the conference room, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in a severe bun. "The Security Council has been messaging non-stop. Half of them think you've compromised Earth's negotiating position. The other half want to nominate you for the Planetary Peace Prize. Elijah sat calmly, reviewing data on his tablet. With respect, Ambassador, I asked someone to dance. I didn't rewrite the accord. Don't be naive, Reed. In interspecies diplomacy, symbolism is everything. Novak stopped packing. The Vexillian trade minister has already requested a private meeting. First time in 15 years they've approached us instead of the other way around. They're suddenly interested in your research. My research? Elijah looked up, genuinely surprised. Apparently, watching you interact with a Lumidian without fear has made them reconsider their position on interspecies medical technology. Novik's stern expression softened slightly. Like it or not, you're now a diplomat as well as a scientist. A soft chime interrupted them. Dr. Reed, the station's AI announced, Ambassador Thera of the Lumidian Collective requests a meeting at your earliest convenience to discuss collaborative research opportunities. Novik raised an eyebrow. Convenient timing, accept it. And Reed, she paused at the door, watch yourself. The Lumidians' empathic abilities make them excellent negotiators. Don't let personal feelings compromise your scientific judgment. After she left, Elijah stared at the meeting request. Novik's warning echoed concerns he'd heard throughout his career, yet his experience with Thera had contradicted every prejudice about Lumidians. Her emotions, visible through her bioluminescence, had seemed genuine: appreciation, joy, connection. He accepted the meeting. 3 days later, the political landscape of Harmonia Station had transformed. The dance had created unexpected momentum, breaking centuries of diplomatic stagnation. Species that had merely tolerated each other were cautiously engaging in cultural exchanges. At the center of this diplomatic whirlwind were Elijah and Thera, whose collaboration had expanded beyond a single dance to a joint research initiative. In Harmonia's central research laboratory, they worked side by side, their initial awkwardness giving way to professional respect and growing friendship. Your approach to cellular regeneration is fascinating, Thera commented, studying Elijah's models. Lumidian medicine focuses on energy fields rather than cellular manipulation, but the applications could be complementary. Elijah nodded, acutely aware of the soft glow she emitted. That's what I'm hopping. If we combine your biofield technology with my regenerative treatments, we might create a universal healing protocol that works across species boundaries. Their research sessions often extended beyond formal hours, conversations drifting from scientific theory to personal experiences. Elijah learned that Thera had volunteered for diplomatic service, specifically to change perceptions about her people. Thera discovered Elijah's childhood on Mars had given him a unique perspective on being human in non-Earth environments. Not everyone viewed their collaboration favorably. Conservative factions across multiple species watched with growing alarm. The Vexillian Security Council warned of dangerous biofield contamination. Earth's ultra-traditionalist party issued statements about maintaining human genetic purity. Even among Lumidians, traditionalists like Elder Nixon questioned the wisdom of sharing their biofield science with emotionally volatile species. These undercurrents of resistance remained largely in the background until 6 weeks after the centennial celebration, when disaster struck. Alarms blared throughout Harmonia Station. Emergency lighting bathed corridors in red as the station's AI announced, "Biohazard alert. Unknown pathogen detected in atmospheric systems. All personnel report to nearest medical assessment points." In central research, Elijah and Thera looked up from their work, exchanging concerned glances. "That's not possible," Elijah said. "Harmonia has the most advanced biofilters in the Alliance." Thera's luminescence pulsed rapidly, the Lumidian equivalent of a racing heartbeat, unless someone deliberately introduced it. Within hours, the situation became critical. Hundreds of delegates and station personnel reported symptoms: fever, respiratory distress, neurological effects that varied by species. Medical teams were overwhelmed, lacking effective treatments for a pathogen that seemed designed to affect multiple physiologies. In an emergency council meeting, accusations flew across species lines. The Arcturian High Commander suggested Terrellian biological warfare. The Vexillian minister accused Earth of manufacturing the crisis to strengthen their position in resource negotiations. Delegates who had begun tentative friendships now eyed each other with suspicion. Ambassador Novak pulled Elijah aside after the chaotic meeting. "Medical is requesting your expertise. This pathogen is adapting to treatment faster than anything they've seen. I'll need access to all biometric data across species," Elijah said. "And Thera, her knowledge of biofields might be crucial." Novak hesitated. "Some on the Security Council are suggesting Lumidian involvement. Their immunity to the pathogen seems convenient." "That's absurd," Elijah snapped. "Lumidian physiology is fundamentally different." "I know," Novak interrupted, "but fear is spreading faster than the pathogen. Be careful." In the quarantined research lab, Elijah and Thera worked frantically, analyzing pathogen samples and victim biometrics. Days blurred together as they tested treatment combinations, catching sleep in brief intervals on cots in the lab. "It's artificial," Elijah concluded on the fifth day, staring at genetic sequencing results. "This pathogen contains markers from at least 3 different species' DNA. Someone engineered it." Thera's glow had dimmed with exhaustion but now pulsed with alarm. "A biological weapon." "Yes, but who would?" Elijah stopped as realization dawned. "It's not meant to kill. Look at the mortality rates, nearly zero despite widespread infection. It's designed to create fear, suspicion." "To drive us apart," Thera finished, "after we started coming together." Their eyes met across the lab bench, mutual understanding passing between them. Someone wanted to destroy the fragile connections forming between species, connections that had begun with their dance. As they worked on a treatment, resistance to their collaboration intensified. Elder Nixon arrived from the Lumidian homeworld, demanding Thera's immediate recall for her own protection. On Earth, the ultra-traditionalist party called for quarantine protocols that would effectively end all interspecies contact. Security on the station tightened, with species retreating to their designated sections. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. While Elijah slept, Thera noticed something unusual in his brainwave patterns. The pathogen affected neural pathways differently across species, but there was a consistent pattern in the disruption, one that resembled the manipulative techniques banned after the Proxima conflict. When Elijah awoke, Thera's luminescence was brighter than he'd ever seen it. "I know what it is," she said without preamble, "and I know who created it." The evidence they compiled was irrefutable. A coalition of extremists from multiple species, united only by their opposition to integration, had collaborated to engineer and release the pathogen. Its design incorporated banned Proxima-era technology specifically to cast suspicion on Lumidians. Their treatment protocol was equally revolutionary, a combination of Elijah's cellular regeneration therapy and Lumidian biofield stabilization that not only cured the pathogen but strengthened immune response across species boundaries. When they presented their findings and treatment to the Emergency Council, the chamber erupted in chaos. Elder Nixon accused Thera of betraying Lumidian secrets. General Drayson of Earth's military contingent questioned Elijah's loyalty to humanity. "Enough," Ambassador Novak's voice cut through the din. "While you've been arguing, Dr. Reed and Ambassador Thera have treated over 500 patients. The recovery rate is 100%. At what cost?" Elder Nixon demanded. "Sharing our sacred biofield science with species who once called us demons." Thera's luminescence pulsed with unusual intensity as she addressed the council. With respect, Elder, our science was never meant to be hoarded but to heal. The founders of our collective believed that luminescence was given to us not to separate, but to illuminate, to light the way forward. Elijah stepped forward to stand beside her. The pathogen was engineered by those who fear change, those who would rather see us divided than discovering what we might become together. They nearly succeeded. He activated a holographic display showing the treatment protocol. This isn't Lumidian science or human medicine. It's something new that could only exist because Ambassador Thera and I dared to work together, to trust each other despite centuries of prejudice telling us we shouldn't. The council chamber fell silent. Then, slowly, Ambassador Doran stood. I move that we implement Reed Thera protocol immediately and commence investigation into the extremist coalition. One by one, representatives from each species stood in agreement. In the aftermath, Harmonia Station became a symbol of genuine cooperation rather than performative diplomacy. The Reed Thera protocol formed the foundation for a new branch of interspecies medicine. Most importantly, the barriers that had begun to fall the night of the dance continued to crumble. 6 months after the centennial celebration, Elijah found Thera in her favorite observation lounge, watching distant stars. Her luminescence created soft patterns on the viewpoint glass. The Arcturian Science Academy approved our joint research proposal, he said, joining her at the viewport. Full funding for 5 years. And the new medical center on Earth, she asked. Breaking ground next month. First Lumidian human collaborative facility on the planet. He hesitated. They want us both there for the ceremony. Thera's glow shifted to a pattern he had come to recognize as joy. Earth. I never imagined I would see it. After everything that's happened, I think we've earned a dance under Earth's moon instead of Harmonia's stars, Elijah said with a smile. I would like that, Thera replied softly. Her luminescence extended slightly, the edge of her biofield brushing against his hand, the Lumidian equivalent of reaching out. Without hesitation, Elijah took her glowing hand in his. After months of working together, the tingling sensation of their different bioenergies meeting had become familiar, comforting. Beyond the viewport, ships from all 8 Alliance worlds moved through space in harmony. Among them was a new vessel, the first to be jointly designed and crewed by members of every species, named simply Unity. It had begun with a dance, one human reaching out to one Lumidian across a divide that had seemed unbridgeable. Now that simple gesture was echoing across the void between worlds, creating possibilities that neither Elijah nor Thera could have imagined when they first stepped onto the dance floor together. As they stood watching the stars, their joined silhouettes cast a unique shadow, neither fully human nor fully Lumidian, but something new and full of promise. Just like the future they had helped create, Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.